And hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Alicia with Coaching with Dr. Alicia. And I just want to welcome everybody back. It is Sunday night. So, this is where I am on Fly Nubian Queen and also on Voice and Alicia TV and also on Facebook. So, hello, everybody. Welcome to our broadcast today. We are here to talk about all things mental health and relationships, but specifically, we are going to dive into the ongoing drama between Keke Palmer and her ex boyfriend, father to her newborn baby, who's going to be one soon in February, right? A couple of months, he'll be one. Her ex boyfriend at this point, Darius Jackson. And as many of you all know, Keke filed a restraining order against Darius for domestic violence. This situation has been all over social media, and I wanted to carve out this time so that two therapists can sit here and talk about it. And we wanted to take this time out to discuss it. First and foremost, I just want to say this is alleged, right? So she's saying that he was abusive to her. There's evidence of it that's been all over social media. However, I just want to make that it's alleged, but Keke Palmer did go to court and got a restraining order. So it will be investigated and we'll let them hash all that out in the courts. But I just want to say, first and foremost, domestic violence is a very serious issue and it affects millions of us. What I found was interesting is that it especially affects Black women. So my guest here, Dr. Cris, I will introduce her in a minute. She brought to my attention something really interesting. I was reading this article that was forwarded to me. It's from the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey. I'm going to put the link in the chat for all of us to look at that. But nationally, 45% of Black women experience contact sexual violence, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 45%. And the survey also found that 40% of Black men experience sexual violence, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. Those numbers and those statistics are just really, really something. So this is just to say, regardless of your fame and fortune, regardless of your status, this is an issue that affects everybody, but it particularly affects our community. So it's important not only that we show support and we believe survivors of domestic violence, but it's also important to educate ourselves on the signs of abuse and all the different ways we can help. So to help me with this discussion of this topic today, I'm finally going to introduce you to my dear friend, Dr. Cris. Hello, Dr. Cris.
Hello. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, so this article is really something. Tell me, what do you think about this article? I'm gonna put the link into the chat, but tell me, what are you thinking about in terms of these numbers?
Shocking in a way. We know, I think, we know as people in the mental health field that domestic violence, intimate partner violence is higher than what most people think it is in the world. But to see something as high as 45% and then see only a 5% difference, that means, I don't know if that's a significant difference in our world statistically, but we're talking about, just as many Black women and Black men are having these experiences. And that's truly shocking. The article goes on even to kind of compare this to other races. And they talked about how when it comes to just the physical violence part, if they parcel out that aspect, we see quite a disparity. We see more like 41% of Black women in their lifetime are experienced physical violence from an intimate partner. That's compared to only 31% of white women, 30% of Hispanic women, and 15% of Asian or Pacific Islander. So It's interesting, and of course, I think the next question brings us to what's contributing to that. Why are we seeing such a higher rate in one community versus another, right?
Yeah, I mean, that is really something. And I'm reading this article. By the way, I put the link to the article in the chat. And it says Black women ages 25 to 29. So these are young women. Black women ages 25 to 29 are 11 times more likely as white women in that age group to be murdered while pregnant or in the first year after childbirth. Whoa, 11 times more likely.
That's yeah,
I couldn't believe that. This is
yeah.
not to say that this is going to be the outcome of Keke Palmer. I really, really hope that that's not the case. But and I'm thinking about the pregnancy. When you are pregnant, I've been pregnant 3 times, so I've had 3 children. I do know this. When you are pregnant and you're having a baby, all attention is on you. And for a lot of men, they can get really jealous of this. I'm not saying this is the case for Black men. Clearly, there's violence going back and forth between Black men and women. Overwhelming number 40% of Black men are victims of domestic violence. 45% of Black women are victims or survivors of domestic violence. You're right, Cris, only a 5-point difference. But it's really, really chaotic in those moments where a woman is vulnerable. And most vulnerable situation is when you're pregnant.
Abs-
And
Absolutely.
yeah, and you're in this situation, all attention is on you, but it's not really on you because of you. It's on you because you're carrying this baby. So all these people are poking and prodding. It's very stressful. Your hormones are out of whack. You're hungry, you're cranky, you're tired. You are incubating life. And so that is something that I think we need to pay attention to. And it's unfortunate that Keke Palmer and her ex-boyfriend is going through this, but this is a perfect opportunity for us to have this discussion today about this topic. Did you want to add to that?
No, I mean, absolutely, I agree. And certainly, the idea is we don't want this to happen to anyone. And we certainly aren't saying this is going to happen to Keke Palmer. I think what we're trying to highlight here is that this is, this kind of environment or setting or situation in your life can be very serious in the sense that it can be fatal. And so we have to take these things very seriously. Um, and I think, beyond mental health, we're seeing it when we survey people out in the community about what they're experiencing. Almost half, almost 1 in 2 Black men and women are experiencing this. So it is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, when you mention half, you know what I think? I said think of 4 Black couples. 4. Can y'all think of 4 Black couples? Let me say hello to everybody in the chat. In the chat, everybody who's joining us today, let us know. Can you think of 4 Black couples? 4 couples in your mind. Welcome everybody. If you can think of those 4, that means 2 of them are experiencing domestic violence.
That's
2.
not to say necessarily that they're
I
having it
mean,
right there in their
according to this
current
statistic,
situation,
right? Yeah.
right? Meaning in their lifetime. Maybe it was their previous relationship. We're talking
Mhm.
about over a lifetime. Out of those 4 couples, 2 of those couples have, or half of those couples have experienced something in their
Experience.
lifetime.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, I mean, that's to think about the gravity of it, because I'm thinking of many couples in my mind, and you never know what happens behind closed doors. And I think what's interesting about Keke and her ex-boyfriend Darius is that it is especially difficult for celebrities to navigate these personal relationships in the public eye. They get
Absolutely.
this constant scrutiny and pressure from fans and media, and it can make it very challenging to have a healthy relationship dynamic. It can be really difficult. This doesn't
Right.
excuse, any form of abuse, but it is it really important to recognize that there's an added complexity that comes with fame in the public eye. And I think that with those complexities, I mean, can you imagine someone having a big spotlight on your relationship, and everywhere you go there's paparazzi and people filming, and they're like, I've seen pictures of Keke Palmer where she's like on the phone holding her baby, and they're like, what's up with her? I mean, that makes it so that you don't have any privacy to take care of something that's really private in your intimate relationship. Not to mention, and comment on that, Cris, because I want to weigh in on the fact that her mother's been highly involved. But before I do that, how about you talk about that? What do you think about that in terms of having that scrutiny in the public eye and fame? What do you think about that? Yeah.
You know, I have to give it to Keke. I think she handled some things with grace, because this restraining order that's popped up in the news is not the first time she's been probed. It seems like she grew up in this industry, and I commend her, because again, she's responded to things in the past with grace, I believe. And I think she's at minimum aware of kind of the additional um, factors that she's got to navigate as someone who is in the public eye. And I think now that she has a child of her own, that's a whole nother level. It's okay for me to be in the public eye, but my child, that's another thing. And I think that's we've seen in the past, when she's been interviewed and people start to probe into, what's going on in Keke's personal life, she's like, I'm gonna keep that personal. So I commend her for that. And I can imagine, as someone who has done that and taken, intentional steps to keep her personal life out of the media, I can't imagine how difficult right now, because filing that restraining order, I'm sure, it hits the news because it's public record. And so
Yeah.
I'm sure she's having a hard time navigating that even more so.
Yeah, very good point, Cris. And I just want to say hello, and hello, Natasha Parker. Hello, how you doing? She says, welcome, good evening, Dr. Alicia and Dr. Cris. Natasha must know, she knows about us. Welcome, everybody. Hawk Mode was with us early into the chat, so he was weighing in on it early. And anyone else, if you want us to comment on your name, if you have any comments or questions, you can put it in the chat. Maybe one day we'll have to take some questions and get some hot seat questions if you have some, because you got two therapists here. Dr. Cris, hello, Aaron Diaz. Hey, ma'am. They're calling us ma'am. Hello there. Maybe if you have any relationship questions, you can put it in the chat. We're here. We're two
Right.
therapists. By the way, Dr. Cris, I didn't even introduce you really, but Dr. Cris has 2 PhDs. I'm so proud of her. I knew her back when it's so funny. I knew you before you were Dr. Cris, and then I knew Boyce before he was Dr. Boyce. Like we all, it's so funny how we all kind of like have like minds and we have similar goals. But Cris got 2 PhDs. So she's like super extra special and very intelligent, very smart. So and by the way, if anybody really needs, this is an important topic, and I think if someone's struggling with something like this, you can reach out. Definitely, if you feel like your life is in danger, call 911.
Yes.
And they will connect you with you'll be in contact with people who can really help you at your local level, because I see people all over, and I have to, if I sense that there's some domestic violence issues happening, I definitely do some safety planning and talk about how they can be, safe, and what they can do in case you don't feel safe anymore in your home. One thing I do tell my clients, and I used to work in a hospital emergency room, so I used to tell patients this all the time, was that, if you feel like your life is in danger, number one, stay out of the bathrooms, because in the bathrooms you can be trapped in bathrooms and not able to get out. Another thing I tell people to do is to stay out of the kitchen because there's a lot of sharp objects in the kitchen. And the third thing I talk to patients about and clients, if they ever feel like they're in danger, to plan ahead. Like if there's somebody in their neighborhood that they feel like they can trust, that they can talk to, hey, if I'm ever unsafe, is it okay for me to come to you? You know, and so it's leaving a partner who has been violent toward you, and this is men and women. It's not always wise to just up and leave right
No.
away because you're putting yourself at risk. So you have to plan to leave, and there's steps to this. So we talk about it and we strategize, like keeping a bag packed. If you have children, keeping your all of the important documents and everything, make copies of them, get copies of them, put it in the bag close to the door, or hide it somewhere in the yard, or leave it at a friend's house, somewhere where if you need to have a code red and really need some help, you can reach out. So having some safety planning are things that we as professionals talk to people about. Cris, you're nodding your head. Anything you want to add to that?
Now, this is absolutely important. The most fatal time, or the highest increase of the risk of a victim's life, whether it's man or woman, is those first 24 to 48 hours after they leave the abuser. Because here's the deal. That kind of abuse is about power and control. And so when the victim leaves the abuser, that's even pushing or pulling on the fact that they're losing control. So they're going to go to higher means to further control you. So it's very important, very important. Reach out. There are community resources. Reach out to people who are safe to you. I love your idea, or what you mentioned, Alicia, about reaching out to neighbors. Reach out to people around you.
Yeah, so that's important. So anyway, yeah, I think it's interesting when you talk about reaching out to people, because I think it's also worth mentioning that Keke Palmer's mother has been in the middle of this ongoing conflict. And we can't imagine how difficult it must be for her to see her daughter go through such a traumatic experience. Allegedly, we got to say allegedly here, but to see a loved one go through this traumatic experience must be really, really difficult. And this really goes to show that domestic violence, it doesn't only affect the victim, but it also affects the loved one, especially when you have a child with this person. Think about it. This person is going to be around for a long time. You got to go to Christmas and holidays and anniversaries and graduations and weddings and funerals. So it's a you're going to have an ongoing relationship with this person for the rest of the life of the child. It's not like you could just throw this person away. So I think that the involvement of Keke's mother in these arguments raises questions on how family dynamics can impact romantic relationships, and how crucial it is, to seek help when you need it, but at the same time, setting some boundaries. Like, what do you think about? Do you think Keke's mother kind of overstepped her boundaries? Because Keke called her on the phone. So clearly they had some discussions, but Black mamas, they ain't gonna sit back and see their baby get hurt. Don't have them have to have to call up the troops to come and rescue their child. What do you think about that, Cris?
Um, yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one because I get it. I get the mama bear part, especially. Uh, I also think there are cultural factors involved. You know, I think, for example, one of the things that was brought up in terms of what Keke's mom was saying is that she had reached out to Darius's older brother for support previously. And so I think there's a cultural component in that. Whether it's a Black culture, there's other cultures of color, Asian, Latino, etc., where more than I think what you see in the white culture, reaching out to the extended family to problem solve.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that's a sticky because you're right. There's certain boundaries that need to be held. So, part of what I wondered is, had Kiki's mom try to be quiet for a while and stay out of it and just couldn't take it no more, you know? Or, when I did read at some point that, again, allegedly she had said, no, I think actually that was a recorded video. And she said, to Darius's older brother, I reached out to you to address this issue before, you know, that I can see. I don't know. It again, culturally, I can see where that can be okay. And if that's the last part of it, just trying to support, not get in the mix of daily interactions and so forth. So I can't make like one side or the other on this one, Alicia. It's a
I know
difficult
it's all
conversation.
it's all kind of alleged, but I think that when you get Big Mama involved, I mean, you better know what's going to happen of that. And it doesn't seem like this relationship would reconcile, but I think in a lot of our communities, and I know you can speak about Asian community. By the way, Asian communities and Black communities are attached at the hip because it's very any all non-white cultures are pretty similar in a way where extended family is not extended
Yeah,
family. Like we treat you like, there's no cousins. It's like my sister,
right.
and so
Yes.
it's like we bring it all in. We bring all them people in, and Thanksgiving
Yes.
is gonna be real sticky if you ain't doing right,
Yes.
because we go and tell it. And so
Yes.
that's the thing. It's like getting these people involved, and sometimes you get back together, and you gotta like, it makes it really interesting.
It
Um,
does.
yeah, it makes it pretty fascinating, kind of interesting dynamic within families when you bring people in. And that's just how it is. It's not like we're going to keep this secret. We're going to talk about it. And I think that yeah, I think there's a lot that we can learn from this situation. I think that you know Keke Palmer's recent struggle with her ex-boyfriend, the father of her child, I think that we can learn from this situation. And before I ask you, what can we learn from this situation with Keke and Darius? They have a child together. They need to learn how to co-parent. And by the way, just because there's alleged domestic violence between mom and dad doesn't mean that you can restrict the perpetrating parent from being with their child. Like, so there's no more of that alienation. Just because there's domestic history of domestic violence doesn't mean that you can stop them from seeing their child. So that makes it really sticky. And
Mhm.
so by the way, I just wanted to highlight that you can't stop that person. Just because that person's mean to you doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be mean to their child. Hypothetically, we don't, so that's not enough to keep a non-custodial parent away from the children just because there's a domestic violence situation. So I just wanted to highlight that part. What did you have to say about that? It makes it extra sticky because she can't stop him from seeing his child just because there's these contentious issues between the parents. Poor baby growing up in this situation, all televised. Can you imagine? I can't imagine if my parents gave birth to me, and within the first year of my life I see my mama rubbing up on Usher of all people, dressed in this outfit and fighting with my dad, and my parents fighting with each other publicly. Anything you have to add to that about what we can learn from this situation?
Um, well, one of the things in terms of family that comes to mind is, I think we can all relate to the fact that, a lot of times family is our support system. They're the first layer. So yeah, when it's very typical or common and understandable that when we have issues within our lives or our intimate relationships, we're gonna go talk to our sister or auntie or mother or uncle or brother. we're going to reach out a lot of times to our family members. And so, you know, it's hard. Again, it's hard to answer that question, or how. I think I have to do a case by case basis and looking at the boundaries, because a lot of times, whoever that is, in Kiki's situation, it was her mother, but whoever that is in your family that might step forward, on your behalf, communication is important. Letting them know that, um, for example, I'm complaining about this or that, but I'm going to get it together. Like, this is my intention. Those are the things you should look out for as a family member. If they're trying to work on it, that's not the time for you to intervene, right? Um, I always would say that communicating with the person in terms of, intimate partner violence, going to that victim, if that's your family member, making sure they're, at minimum, they're okay with you speaking out, whether, as all over social media as a famous person, or even just within your own, local world or whatever. Um,
Yeah, I think I think it was brave for Kiki to speak out like that. I think, if she felt like she was in a situation where she felt like she needed to have a restraining order, and judges will grant a restraining order and a temporary restraining order until they can investigate further. So just because he had that restraining order doesn't mean that by the time they go to court that the restraining order will be upheld. It doesn't mean any of that is going to happen. So but the thing is that you have this baby born in this very toxic situation where neither one of their parents can keep their shit together. Excuse me for saying that. And I really do think that both of them go and get some get some help and get some counseling and try to figure out and work together so that they can raise their child in a healthy, loving environment, which all children deserve. And no matter how much money you have, that doesn't mean that you're immune to these very real issues. And I think that they have all the resources at their fingertips, and they need therapy. I mean, dealing with figuring out what are the rules of their relationship now that they're ex-partners. What you can't tell another person what to do in their household. Like, there's two different households. They're not together. It didn't even seem like they weren't even married to each other, but they're not together. You can't tell another person what they can do in their household. So just understanding what the boundaries are there, and just knowing that you co-parent, you sit down and you have discussions ahead of time. What are visitations? What's the parenting plan? Having that visitation and following through on it. If someone is expecting you to be there at 2 o'clock, you show up at 2 o'clock. Someone's expecting you to be there, drop them back off again at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's what you do. And you do that not for the other parent. You don't do that so you can look like a good parent. You do that so the child feels safe, secure.
Absolutely.
And knows that they got parents with some sense. The parents can't get it together. So I really think, that's important. You have to grow up. You can't be hostile. If you can't keep it together, and somebody triggers you and you just go from 0 to 100 and you're very explosive, or even if you do the opposite, you're very dismissive. You become very dismissive in arguments. Those type of things you need to take a look at, because your children are watching you. Your children are watching you and watching what you're doing. So it's just important when you have children to just grow up and be an adult. And unfortunately, not enough of us are doing that, or we wouldn't be at 45% of Black women, 45% of Black women, and 40% of Black men are survivors of abuse.
I want to jump into
Yeah.
Alicia and say, like, in addition to that article that you put in the chat, I was looking at another one that kind of expanded on the topic. And I think that we want to be careful to understand that though we're seeing a higher percentage in the Black community, it's not, we don't say, like, it's the Black community's fault, right? And one of the things that this study was looking at is that it's not cultural factors. it's the economic and social factors
Yeah.
that are more impact more so of the Black community than any other community. So when they parceled out some of the social and economical factors, looking at, you know, Black community population and their experiences with IPV, intimate partner violence, what they were seeing is that, the the number one factor, predictive factor, um, is the unemployment, the fact that the abuser is unemployed.
Yeah.
Um,
Go keep going, Cris. I'm sorry. Yeah.
no, that's okay. And so, that's what I found that very interesting, because I do think, especially in today's world, we see like facts or figures, numbers, percentages being thrown out there, and then people kind of come to their own conclusions. And I think a lot of times what we see in population, or in our world, is like people, we just tend to want to say, oh, that's their problem. Okay, no, this is not about the culture as much as the um
Economics.
exactly, the socioeconomic factors that come into play. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is really good because I teach this in my domestic violence class. As a domestic violence class that I teach at the university. And yeah, it is economic. We know that unemployment rates and financial instability is what's going to have a hostile household. I mean, I'm sorry. It's the stress. It's the stress of the economic pressures nowadays. It is expensive. Filled up gas in my car. I can't believe how expensive gas is. My grocery bill, it's unbelievable. And I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where, I can afford, I buy really nice food. I eat healthy, but it's not so easy to eat healthy. I'm talking about, oh,
No.
just eat fruits and vegetables. That'll be great. Like, seriously, fruits and vegetables is expensive. Fresh fruits and vegetables cost. And so there's a cost associated with that. So yeah, economically, you want to be able to eat better and do better so that you can feel better. But sometimes you can't because you don't have enough money. You're stressing every month. Every month. Rent is due every single month. And if we're struggling with rent and I'm looking at my partner like, what's wrong with you? There's gonna be some fighting happening in there
Right.
because of economics. And it's so interesting, even when it comes to children, child abuse cases, they can predict child abuse cases just based on unemployment rates in neighborhoods. Is a Garbarino study. I love teaching about Garbarino because I teach about the person and environment, the person and environment perspective that, yeah, some of it is you, but also we got to deconstruct a lot of that because sometimes it's the environment that's
Absolutely.
that's having an effect on you. And economically, we now know that there's an inverse relationship. When unemployment rates go down, when unemployment rates go down, cases of child abuse and neglect also go down. When
Yeah.
unemployment is up, cases no, when unemployment is
Yeah.
up, cases of
No.
child abuse
Yeah.
also goes up. So I
Right.
mean, they go coincide together. And Garbarino was one of the very first people to actually put it all together in his big meta database about, wait a minute, unemployment rates is really dictating the child abuse and neglect cases for every state. So that does tell you about economic. And then we talk about social factors. There's a rapper who's a really good friend of ours. His name is D1. I was telling you about it. And he was criticizing rappers who are getting online and all they're doing is rapping about violence. And he even calls it murder music, where they are enculturating young Black people in their minds over and over again, priming them to be violent and to react in a way that's very violent. And how could it not play out in our homes? It's what we listen to in our homes, people who listen to it. Part of, it's a segment of our community that I think, people like D1 are starting to speak out about. about that music and the impact that the music has on our family. So, it's a very violent. I mean, look what's going on. We live in a violent world. I mean, when you
Yeah.
talk about violence, we can go on and on and on about the impact of violence in our communities. But you know what's going on? We're violent in our hearts. And I think a lot of what's going on with us in our hearts and our soul is disturbed, because I really do think that what happens in our home has a big impact on how we're going to view the world when we leave our home. That's why
Absolutely.
it's so tragic to see Keke Palmer and her ex-boyfriend, be on public display of, here's this terrible situation. They can't get along, but their parents, both of them are parents. They agreed to have this baby together, and they need to behave like it. So that's what I'd be saying. That'd be my big mama voice. Like, y'all need to get along. Y'all need to stop. But Keke Palmer's mama, she wasn't having that. She was like, listen, I will put a bullet in your head. Did you hear her say that? I was
I sure
like,
did. I sure did.
whoa, I'm gonna put a bullet in your head. You better leave my daughter alone. So there it is. She didn't you woke up Big Mama, and Big Mama is very important in our community. So anyway, you wanted to comment on that before we start to wrap up for today.
Um, no, just that, well said. Everything, I agree with that. Boundaries are so important. Again, it's even as we move forward, or I'm sorry,
Yes.
even as Keke and Darius move forward as parents, boundaries are going to be important. Communication is going to be important. And I love what you said about they need to have that agreement and stick to that agreement to create that safe place for their child.
Yeah,
I love that.
you can't have a baby growing up in nothing but chaos. I
No.
mean, that's gonna hurt his little soul. That cute little baby, it hurts us as children, when our parents can't get together and come up with predictable environment. Okay, I know my dad's gonna be here at this time. I know my mom's gonna be here at this time. I can count on this predictability. So yeah, that's so important. Natasha, welcome, Natasha. Hello to everybody who's joined us today. I just want to say hello to everyone. Hello, Helen. I see you. I see you, Helen. Hello. And Denise is here. And Natasha Parker, look at her. She says, how can we tell a difference between setting boundaries versus manipulation? Maybe I can take that one.
Please
Yeah,
do.
I think it's a conversation you need to have with your ex-partner about boundaries. Part of boundaries is having a parenting plan. Let's sit down and have this parenting plan. Never should it be the non-custodial parent coming to the house talking about, I want to take my baby today. I'm coming to pick my baby up today. No, it shouldn't be like that. That's poor boundaries. That's manipulation. I'm going to come, and because really, underneath some of that could be, I want to see what you're doing. I want to see what you're up to. You're uninvited. I think that's poor boundaries, and that could be manipulation. So you have to have conversation. Really, a good boundary in terms of co-parenting is to stick to just the co-parent. Tell me how this conversation is related to the best interest of this child. If not, it's none of your business what I do, where I am, what I'm doing. As long as the child is not injured, it's none of your business. You can't tell somebody what to do in their household. So that's an example of, you can't control what's happening. And I've had to I talk to parents a lot about what they can and cannot do in these households. And so that's part of manipulation. You can't control. You talked about, this is about control. You can't control what another person does. Did you want to weigh in on manipulating behavior?
Sure. I'll take it from a different angle. I
Okay.
think one of the red flags that we typically see for people who are in the middle of interpersonal or intimate partner violence is the abuser will take steps to kind of isolate you. Um, if you're the victim, isolate the victim. So for example, this can look something like, you know, maybe, you're a single mom now dating somebody, and your daughter is coming to you and saying, I have concerns. You know, I'm actually taking that from that real life story, Dirty John. I don't know
Okay.
if anybody's seen it, but you can have a situation where your family, your social circle, your social support system is telling you things like, oh, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? That didn't seem so good. And then the response that you're hearing from your partner, intimate partner, is more of against them and more of taking steps to isolate you from them. I think that's a form of manipulation. Okay, so they're trying to manipulate your perspective on a situation, and trying to get you to see those other people who are your support system as bad people, people who are
Yeah.
against
That's when you know there's manipulation happening. When you are in a situation and you carve out a circle and it's saying it's us and then them. And the
you. Yeah,
them are the enemy. You know what I mean? It's
that,
me and you together and everybody else is the enemy, when that is manipulation. And I think that, you know, you should be open in your relationship for whoever's important to you is also important to me, and
that's right.
whoever is important to me is important to you, and maintaining those boundaries within that and not cutting people off from individuals who are important to them, you
That's right.
know. And sometimes your family members will see things you don't see, and you have to be able to listen to that, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, it's manipulation for sure. So anyway, as we wrap up today, before we get into our parting thoughts, I just want to say that in situations like this, it's important to remember that love should never involve violence. Okay.
Mhm.
I really do hope that Keke Palmer, and allegedly is a victim of domestic violence. She looked like she could stand her ground, by the way. She ain't somebody that could be pushed over. But we never know what happens behind closed doors. It could be just a persona that she's putting out there, and she really has been victimized. So I think, but whatever it is, I think that we need to find the support and healing that we need. I think we should continue these conversations, Cris, about having open and honest discussions about these difficult topics. And it'll be, really nice if all of this gets resolved in a way that is important for both of them. They both need some sort of therapy. So before we end today, anything that you'd like to share with everyone? Where can people follow you, Cris? By the way, if you're interested in Chris's services, you can go to coachingwithdralicia.com. And Cris has a double PhD, so she can help you. She's very compassionate, very empathetic. She's a beautiful soul, or I would be friends with her. I mean it too. But anyway, you can go on to coachingwithdralicia.com. So and then you can also go there if you want to work with me too. I have trauma surviving group. I had my group today. Today was the very first day I had my cycle 2 of my group of trauma
Yes.
healers. So there's a community of healers. All of us are healing ourselves, and we're all working together and having really great conversations about that. So you can go to coachingwithdralicia.com to find out more. You can also go to coaching Dr. Alicia Wellness to find out more about the online retreat, our online groups, and join our community that way. draliciawellness.com. Okay, last parting words for people who are um, dealing with domestic violence. What should you do? I'm dealing with domestic violence, Dr. Cris. Red flags. What should I look for? Red flags in relationship that help us before it gets to be too late. We don't want to be taking out restraining orders and
No.
recording our mamas cussing out our ex-boyfriend. We don't want to be in this situation. Cris,
No.
help me.
Well, you got to look out for those flags. I am a huge proponent to listening to our bodies. If you are in a situation or finding yourself in situations more often where you don't feel safe, you feel denigrated, you feel anything but positive, We all have conflict. Conflict doesn't mean, though, that we're frequently berated and left to feel less than. And those are flags. Listen to your body, listen to your mind. And in standing up for yourself, please, in this kind of situation, is very important to reach out to support groups, your support system, and to professionals about doing this, addressing this problem in a safe way. If especially if this is something that you've been in a situation for some time, it's really important that there are steps that you take, or get the support to take those steps so that it does not end in a violent situation or some kind of fatality.
Thank you, Cris. I appreciate that. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you for everybody for watching the video. Oh, you're supposed to hit the like button. Hit the like button because I think you're supposed to. You're supposed
Yeah.
to because we tell you to. Hit the like button. Share this with anybody who you think has dealt with this, you think might be beneficial, to have this sort of information today. And if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, of course, please reach out to a trusted friend, family member, a local support hotline. You can contact coachingwithdralicia.com. But if you're in danger, call 911, please, if you're in danger. And remember, you are not alone. Help is available. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Until next time, I'm Dr. Alicia with Dr. Cris, and we will see you later with more topics like this. Goodbye, everybody.